In 2013-14, Florida began using the value-added model to assess teacher effectiveness. Teachers in certain grade levels and subject areas received a VAM score based on how well their students performed on state exams. Using VAM scores, the Florida Department of Education classifies teachers as highly effective, needs improvement, or unsatisfactory. Teachers must be rated as highly effective or effective to teach a state-tested subject area or grade level at schools with a grade below C. Over the years, VAM scores have not been released to school districts until after the first day of school. This requires staff to be reassigned during the pivotal first few weeks of the school year. Polk County Public Schools is lobbying state lawmakers to require that the Florida Department of Education provide school districts with VAM scores by July 31st annually. Meeting this deadline will minimize disruptions to schools, teachers, and most importantly, our students. Planning for a new school year begins months before students arrive on campus. When VAM scores are received, months of work are undone. Schedules must be rebuilt, teachers must be reassigned, substitutes must be used to fill the gaps during the transition. Ultimately, it's the students who are most impacted.
So then as we go through all of that, it just puts the whole year where you had everything ready to go, it's not there anymore. And so now we're having to backtrack, we're having to move, we're having to scramble, and the year's kind of almost like a circus.
In 2017, QVONDA BIRDSONG became principal of Garner Elementary. The school had received 2 consecutive F grades and needed to raise its grade to avoid closure or takeover by a charter operator. Shortly after the school year began, Mrs. Birdsong learned that 2 teachers were being moved to other schools because of their VAM scores. Mrs. Birdsong estimates that it took a full 9 weeks for the teachers to be moved, new teachers to be placed, and for the students to adjust.
Especially for an elementary child, that is huge because that is a fourth of their learning, and it is the very beginning where we set the foundation for their learning. So that's really very difficult for the younger child.
While her school did raise its grade to a C in 2017-18, Mrs. Birdsong says the growth would have been even greater had staff members not been moved based on VAM after the start of the school year.
I actually walked in thinking that I was having the staff that would be with me for that particular year on the heavy lift, and to have that adjusted or changed 3 weeks after the foundation had been set, the teachers were on board with my plan and the kids were on board, to have that change, that really is detrimental to everyone that's involved. It really is.
Shortly after the start of the 2017-18 school year, Bartow Middle School Principal Chris Roberts learned several of his staff members were being reassigned based on VAM.
It was a difficult challenge. It wiped out 5 of my 9 math teachers and 1 of my ELA teachers. And to have to, at that moment, replace those math teachers. You already have a shortage of math teachers in the secondary level. It changed the whole dynamics of the school, of what we had to do, what we had worked for all summer long, and building our classrooms with our ESE inclusion teachers that support our regular ed teachers during the course of the day. When those teachers are gone, we're having to make adjustments on the fly because we can't stop instruction until we get somebody in place.
To fill the gaps, Principal Roberts had to shuffle math-certified personnel who were teaching other subjects into the math vacancies. This created holes in other areas.
It was tough to stomach. It was tough to deal with. You in essence have to go and rebuild some schedules. The teachers that you're supposed to get a replacement teacher. That did not happen, so I'm having to pull teachers that were not teaching math in this instance, that were certified math. We have to put them into that subject now to kind of stop the bleeding, so to speak, because at the end of the day, we're about students. We're about making sure students learn.
In 2018, CHARITH Gaines was removed from her 4th grade teaching assignment and placed in 2nd grade because of her VAM score. The change came just 2 days before the school year was set to begin. She had already met her students and parents at orientation and had not taught 2nd grade in 7 years.
I I was completely devastated. I cried a lot, mainly because I felt responsible for what was happening, even though I wasn't the only one that, was teaching that year, but I felt very responsible because I knew that they weren't only moving me, but they had to move other teachers because they had to move me.
CHARITH volunteered to spend the 2 days she had before school started, Saturday and Sunday, taking down everything in her classroom and starting over. The situation caused her to consider changing careers.
There was a point after this happened where I contemplated leaving teaching altogether because it was demoralizing. It made me feel like I was not an effective teacher. But had I have been given notice, had I have been given time to deal with those emotions and given time to prepare for what was going to happen, then it would have made a huge difference. There wouldn't have been as many tears. It wouldn't have been as difficult. But 2 days, it's just not enough time.
When teachers are moved based on VAM close to or after the start of the school year, it's ultimately the students who are most affected. In 2017, 9th grade student MADISON HART spoke to the Polk County School Board about the issue.
I've had one of the teachers that's being misplaced, and she's a very, very good teacher. I did not like middle school. If I could go back just to be in her class, I would, because she was such a good teacher. And it just really upsets me that good teachers are getting put in places, and it's hurting the administration and the students.
Years later, Madison can still recall the shock of learning her teacher was moved after the start of the school year because of VAM. She hopes this is something future students never have to experience.
I think I would just say that it would be very important for them to get the scores earlier, so that the school and the teachers have time to get everything together before they know if they have to move or not. Because if you just up and tell a teacher halfway through the school year, oh, you're moving to another school, that affects a lot of things. It not only affects the teachers' plans, but it affects kids' education as well.
State Representative Melanie Bell has sponsored HB 793, which would require the Florida Department of Education to provide school districts with VAM scores by July 31st annually. Additionally, Senator Chevron Jones has now sponsored a companion bill, SB 1644. These bills would benefit school administrators, teachers, and most importantly, students.
Thank you, Melanie Bell, for presenting this bill to help not only principals and teachers, but the students as well.
To learn more about Polk County Public Schools' legislative priorities and how you can help support our legislative agenda, visit polkschoolsfl.com/legislative.